So hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dynamic Women in Leadership Summit, where we have 21 amazing experts, leaders, teaching you all they have to know, okay, maybe a piece of what they have to know about how to move yourself forward in your life and your business and your leadership skills. Our next expert, Nancy Giere, is going to talk about bundle your brilliance, turn your expertise into high profit programs. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
It's
been a rough week. I've been recovering from COVID, so I'm bringing every bit of energy I have today to this talk.
So Nancy, let's start off, just share a little bit more about you.
Okay, well, I have been working in the course creation space since before it was cool. I've got over I've got over 30 years of experience creating courses for companies of all sizes, from solopreneurs to Fortune 50 companies. Any type of content, any type of delivery platform you can imagine. I've been there, done that. Yeah. And I think that what has happened, kind of to dovetail onto the prior talk in this group, is during the pandemic, everybody rushed to put courses online because anybody with a computer can create an online course. Yes. And that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. Yeah. Because there's some core principles around good design that are missing from a lot of the content that's out there, which prompted me to go, you know what, it's not about what I know about any particular topic. It's really me helping other people to bundle their brilliance and turn it into something that really showcases who they are.
Yeah. And you're so right about, everyone seemed to become a coach. Everyone seemed to become an expert overnight. A lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I call Mickey Mouse programs and coaches out there. So when it comes to course creation, what is your client's biggest challenge and how do you help them?
Well, the biggest challenge that people have is they're overwhelmed by the amount of information that they have. They've got a lot of content. Gotcha. It exists in all different types of formats. And the question is, how do I take this? How do I pull it together? And how do I turn it into something that's going to be useful, that's actually going to be a course? It can be quite overwhelming. I had one time somebody said to me, I'm not even sure what to put in an outline. And they get overwhelmed and then they stall.
Yeah. So they're an expert in what they're talking about. They just don't know that piece of how to put it together.
How to put it together into a course type of a format, whether it be doing something virtual, as we are now on Zoom, or having it be evergreen content. Yeah. Excuse me, that people can consume anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, because there's two aspects of it. There's the curriculum development piece of it, and then there's the technology and how it's packaged together. So what is one tip that you can offer that's been a real game changer for you and your clients?
Well, people want to rush and move immediately into evergreen content. Yeah. And they're not always ready to do so. So I recommend that you try out your content in a Zoom format and you record it. And then you go back and you look at it and think, well, what can I repurpose from this and what isn't going to work? Now, having said that, it's important to block your content out into small sections before you do the webinar. Mm-hmm. Because when people are consuming it in the evergreen format, the videos need to be, as short as you can make them.
Yeah, not 3 hours in one go.
Right. So if you try to just take it and go, okay, I did the webinar and I'm just gonna put something on, a nice little intro and outro on it. I have a course. No, you have a recording. So what you want to do is plan through the webinar and think about, well, how many discrete segments are there? Yeah. And one way to be able to leverage most of the recording is to come on, do your yada, yada, talk. And then when you get to the end of a segment, pause and smile at the camera and then ask ask for any questions, take the questions, pause and smile again. What that does is it creates a clean space for you to edit and have good transitions between your segments. You can either build the transition into when you're doing the webinar and say, you know, we just talked about X, now we're going to talk about Y, or you can always drop those in later. But just doing that very simple shift makes it easier to transition from the webinar to the evergreen content.
Yeah. And you're also you want your students, your clients to succeed. Yes. And so by breaking it down, it makes it manageable. You might think, oh, it's totally manageable to sit there for 3 hours and do this.
No,
but it's not. And when I'm
even 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it helps them to feel like, oh, I just completed that. Yay. So that's a really good tip as a game changer. So what type of content do you feel works best for an online course?
Well, I'm going to flip it the other direction. When you think about what you can't do online, I worked on a project for a utility, Pacific Gas and Electric, and it was a welding curriculum. Ooh. Now, at some point, they have to pick up the torch and actually weld something. Yeah. So if it's something that people need to really practice, and that they can't do it, you know, it's like I taught something on presentation skills, and a lot of people were like, I'm just going to come to the course, but I don't want to do a presentation. Well, then there's no point in being in the course. So you have to, when you're taking them to that evergreen format, think through what is it that they can actually practice that I will be able to give them feedback on.
Yeah.
You know, what does the feedback loop have to look like? Do you need to actually observe somebody doing something? Do you need to observe somebody in a sales conversation? Really not practical unless maybe you have them send in a tape, but then they got to get permission to record, and then that can get to be quite awkward. So you have to think about kind of what's the end-to-end experience look like, and segment out. This is going to work online. So going back to that same example, there's a lot of math skills involved in that work. You could teach the math skills online, but when they get to actually having to do the more physical part of the job, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. So it really depends on the content that is being shared.
Yes.
And I'm just imagining my dad was a welder, my brother's a welder.
Okay.
They're both Boilermakers. I think the topic is very boring, but you gave a really good example of like, how would you test that? Is it like where they go, here's my metal, here's my blowtorch or whatever, and now here's me joining, and here's the finished product? Like, is that how it is done? So you really have to think big picture here with the topic. So it's not just cookie cutter. Every program, every online course is going to be this way.
The content really drives the way that you're going to design the course.
Yeah. So what can I do to make my course interactive, or what can people do to make their course interactive, engaging, maybe fun? How do we do that?
Well, there's some interesting tools that are out there. That, you know, the first part is with adults, the first bar, if you will, is relevance. Is this content important to me? Is it relevant to what I do? Is it going to solve the problem that I have? That's the first part, is, you know, is it targeted to really meet a specific need? Then once you define that, and then you look at how you want to put it all together, that's then where the engagement types of strategies come in.
Okay.
Now, when we think about engagement, sometimes people think, well, you know, I've got to be entertaining, and I've got to, you know, have all these bells and whistles. But anytime there's the first level of engagement is whenever you shift from one modality to another, that's engagement. Or when something changes, when there's a scene change in a video. I had an epiphany on United Airlines watching a safety briefing. I know that's my life sounds kind of, depends on where I was going.
Great, because it reminds everyone that you should always be looking for how other people are doing things. And so I'm imagining you're sitting there on the plane, you're watching this safety briefing, and you go, oh. So what was the insight you had?
The insight that I had was every time there was a new key point, we all know, put on your seatbelt, the mask, each time they shifted, the scene changed. And not only did the scene change, but it was travel to fabulous locations. So they had two things going on there. One was I was paying attention because I wanted to know where we were going to go next. And the other was, I've always wanted to go to Bali,
Yeah.
or whatever. So there were two things going on there. There was part of it was the messaging around what's next, what could the experience be, but they held my attention because every time there was a new point, scene change. So when you think about creating your courses, your scene change could be as simple as a slide change. It could also be going from being on camera to showing a graphic to showing a video. So every time there's a shift, that's keeping people's attention. So much of engagement is about keeping people where they're paying attention. Now, next flight on United, flight attendants in the aisle, I'm going to read my book.
Hey.
I don't have it rigged up because it's not quite the right thing for this setting, but I use a tool called Ecamm, and I have a Stream Deck. I'm going to hold this little guy up here.
Ecamm's awesome.
This is the hardware. So, Ecamm, and that allows you to just in the space that you're in, do some different things, have a countdown timer at the beginning, being able to move, make your point on your slide, but then go back to how we are now and seeing some of you I can see in the boxes, some of you I can't, but I know you're out there. But to be able to then look at the camera and engage with people instead of staying on a slide forever.
True. Yeah. So it gives you the ability to kind of come back and forth, which is very engaging. And it can even be as simple as recording yourself here sitting, then kind of move closer to the camera, record yourself, stand back, be full body view. And so that's maybe an easy way people can do it. Now you mentioned modality. And so that might be for some people who are not familiar with creating online courses, like what are the different modalities that you can bring in?
So then if you're doing an online course, typically with the tools that are available, there's usually a video and then other ways of connecting to people. So you could have a PDF that's a personal reflection exercise. So you go through a particular topic and then you ask people some questions about it that they'll maybe do some journaling. Then you can look at bringing in using knowledge checks. And knowledge checks is a nice way of saying a quiz. And one of the decisions you want to make is, do I need to really test for understanding, or is this just a way for them to keep them engaged by asking them a couple of questions? The questions need to be relevant to the content, not just kind of like hey, what did you have for lunch today? Because people will just tune out on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then I've got a couple of tools that I really like. One is by Amy Clymer, Climer, and she has something called Clymer cards. And with a Clymer card, she took sort of what you would use in an in-person setting and made it virtually. There's a series of cards and each one has a different image on it. And so you could ask people a question like, which card represents how you're feeling about where you are in the course creation process? That's something that I would do. So the card's online and then it flips over. People then write on the card what their thoughts are. And then you can share everything with the group. So that's a really interesting tool, and it's very easy and it's not very, very pricey.
Yeah.
Then there's also a product called Mentimeter, which allows you to ask questions, turn them into kind of a quiz, sort of a game show type of a format.
Oh, nice.
Where people are competing. So if you do something like that, that works in the Zoom environment. You can also have people ask a similar question to what I asked, but say, tell me one word that describes where you are in the process right now. And then they would type in and it produces a word cloud. So those are some interesting things that you can do that just mix it up a bit. When you're in the evergreen spot, the limitation is on what type of files will whatever platform you're on accept. And one thing that, oh, thank you for typing in Mentimeter.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. It's Kahoot,
Oh, yeah.
Kahoot,
Yeah.
and you can use Kahoot in this type of a setting, or you can have it work in an evergreen setting. You can upload the file there so people can then do it independently. And that's really, they feel like they're playing a game. So if you feel
Yeah.
that actually having some type of a quiz or knowledge check is important to your content,
Yeah.
those tools kind of, they make it more fun.
Can you share a little bit more about
Interesting.
what Kahoot does, just for
Yeah.
people that
So
aren't aware?
what happens is you give everybody a code, and then from the code, that what they do is they actually put the code into their cell phone, and then on and that's where they take the answer the question. So it
Yeah.
comes up on the screen, and then there's four boxes each. There's like red, yellow, blue, and green, and then they pick the box that corresponds with the right answer, and they're evaluated on getting it right, but how quickly they get it right. So it becomes this, oh, it's,
So it's
now we're competitive.
Yeah.
Now we're playing a game,
Yeah.
people. This is going to be awesome. So, and then at the end, everybody ends up on like the Olympic podium, the first, second, and third person. And I know someone who's used it very successfully. Her business is helping I think it's project managers. One of the things is, how do they prepare for the exam? So instead of going through a real boring, quiz that they might do, multiple choice quiz, she turned it into a Kahoot, which gave people incentive.
Yeah.
And I think when you're playing a game, there's something about that there's a higher level of retention, because you're so much more invested, because you're playing a game and you want to win.
Yes, exactly. Well, let me ask the audience right now, do you enjoy when there are interactive games when you're taking a course? Put a yes in there, or if you feel like, it doesn't matter, I don't really care, then let us know like where you're at on that, because you're giving us some really great ideas of how to bring in these other levels of engagement into our courses. And I know how I am when there's a game. I'm like, oh, we're going to be playing a game, I'm going to pay attention, so I know what the answer is. And then there's this like kind of edge of my seat kind of vibe. They did it at the CAPS conference, Canadian Association of Professional Speakers conference. They did some Kahoot games, and the typical people who are super competitive. It was just funny, and it also engaged the chat box as well, because then people were like, oh, of course, so and so, is trying to get in there, and it was fun, and there was camaraderie. Now you've had your career, you've been doing the online courses, you help people, but what's made the biggest difference in your career?
The biggest difference in my career, I've got to go way back, go in the way back machine.
Oh, yeah.
Peabody and Sherman, those are people that are out there that of a certain age, Sherman and Peabody. But early in my career, I was asked to do a course, and this was just, classroom type of a deal. And I'd never done it before. And I said, sure, okay, I'll do this. And, it went okay. I bumped along, and it probably could have been a whole lot better. And then a couple of jobs later, I was put with a cohort of about 30 people, and we worked for a company at that time. It was called Applied Learning, and it was all about creating, at that time, computer aided instruction. This is before the web, so now you all know how old I am. Two throwback references.
Yeah.
And I learned about instructional design, which is a whole methodology for course creation.
Yeah.
Not only did I learn about it, but I had a quality assurance manager and a regular manager who evaluated everything that I did and told me, here's what you need to do to make it better. Here's what you need to do to make it better. Well, that's going on. They brought in a university, and we were getting all in a master's degree program. So we're working on our master's on our lunch hour. We're getting all of this wonderful feedback. And so it really cemented a lot of solid design principles in me, which I think has just served me very well in my career, and is part of why I am doing more done with you work at this point in my life, because it's an opportunity for me to give back from
Yeah.
that very powerful experience that I had of somebody
Yeah.
that had my back and kept saying, here's what you can do to make it better.
Awesome. Yeah, we've been talking a lot the past couple of days about Kate's cheerleaders, accountability, teammates, experts in sport, and you're speaking to how a lot of those pieces come in. So you have a free gift. Why don't you tell
Yes.
us about the free gift while I drop it into the chat? This is for everyone to have. So tell us about it.
Yes. What I did is it's a very short ebook, and it's called 8 Strategies to Create Training That Sells. And it's the outline, or it's an outline of the process. It takes that I use on every type of project. So it's a very simplified version of the instructional design process, just to give you a sense of really what should the end-to-end look like to go
Yeah.
from idea to implementation.
Brilliant. Well, it's in the chat box, everyone. You can grab that. And final thoughts here. We got a couple minutes left. If anyone has questions, throw them in the chat box. But what are your final thoughts that you want to share about course creation?
Final thoughts. Well, be intentional when you design your course. And I'm always looking at other places to inspire me.
Yeah.
And I encourage you to sort of, let's just take it a bit from the entertainment industry. You can look at we can have a story, great stories, right? And the story often starts in a book. And then the book becomes a play, and the play becomes a movie, and then the movie becomes a TV show. Each of these are wonderful ways to engage in a story. Each has constraints and opportunities that need to be taken into consideration. If you try to do a movie in the same way that have it exactly match the book, you might be in the theater for 8 hours. So when
it could be boring.
It can be boring. Be like, really, it's like imagine Mitchner. That's why they did Centennial as a miniseries. When you're looking at designing your courses, what you do when you're live and in person, that's one way of working with people. When you move into the Zoom space, it's another way of teaching. And then when you go to the evergreen space, it's yet another way. Yeah. Each one, just like entertainment, has opportunities and constraints that you want to take into consideration when you create your course.
Yeah. Yeah. And the pieces, no matter where people that are listening are at, whether if you don't have a course, be intentional in creating it and know that you have different ways of bringing it to fruition. And for those who already have a course, I encourage you to go back to it and think, how can I bring in some other modalities, some other ways? Or do I really just need to record this again because it wasn't with the students' success in mind? And then if you have courses and they're going well, then how can you bring it into another completely different modality? There's so many different pieces here. I really appreciate, Nancy, all the different pieces that you're bringing in the chat. Why don't everyone let us know what were your big takeaways from today? And have you created courses yourself? Are you now reimagining what you want to do with your course? Are you like, oh my gosh, some of these tips that Nancy said, I really need to look at? So let us know in the chat box. Let's light it up. Let's put some exclamation marks for the amazing content that Nancy has shared. Adrian says, exploring more modalities.
Yeah, looking at, it's always, you don't want to wait to be perfect, but just keep improving. We're very lucky that that the way technology is, that you can swap things out.
If you record in pieces, like you said, right? It's much easier to flip out one piece than it is to have to redo the whole area. Amazing. So thank you again, Nancy, so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. My pleasure to be here today.